There may be an optics shortage on the way, and you definitely want to get your optics before this becomes a problem for you. Another YouTube creator, Tiborosaurus Rex, actually mentioned the glass shortage in scopes and other optics being a problem here very soon. But when I began to dig into the whole meat and potatoes of this situation, I found some other information that you might want to know about. Hey everybody! It's Magic Prepper, and today we're talking about how an optics shortage might be on its way, and how if you're looking at optics and you want to get a scope or a red dot sight or a holographic sight or something along those lines, you might want to pull the trigger on that very soon here, because this shortage is going to hit us in a way that we wouldn't have expected if we allow it to. Make sure you're getting ahead of your purchases, because with this supply chain situation we have lately, you know that it's only a matter of time before you can no longer get what it is that you wanted. And if you're worried about being able to get optics and you need a new sweet red dot sight, then hit the subscribe button below, because when these things come up, I'll try my best to keep you informed about them and give you an idea of what you should or should not be doing in the current state of things, okay? So here's what happened when I started looking into the optics shortage situation. Like I said, Tiborosaurus Rex mentioned it on his channel because of glass supply and such from other countries are harder and harder to get here and causing a problem within the optics industry. And I will link his video up here on the video up in the cards, so that way you guys can see it for yourself and kind of hear what he has to say. And I do like his channel, so make sure you check him out. But when he said that, I thought, okay, so let's check that out and kind of see what else is going to be pulled into this whole mess, because usually that's how these things work. And what I found was that the entire photonics industry is being affected by the semiconductor shortage. So the microchip shortage is actually affecting any electro-optics components, okay? So what is the photonics industry? Well, it counts as fiber optic communications, barcode readers, laser pointers, range finders, and other electro-optics. So basically anything you can think of related to firearms in the sense of optics, anything with illumination, laser sights, night vision, anything like that is going to be covered by the photonics industry. And obviously they're struggling because of this semiconductor shortage, okay? So what should you be looking for right now, or what should you buy now if you're thinking about making a purchase already but maybe haven't decided to settle on something quite yet? Well, obviously red dot sights, holographic sights, illuminated scopes, laser sights, night vision, or even thermal optics are going to be a good thing for you to try to get now ahead of time before the shortage either raises prices or creates scarcity where you're not able to actually acquire what it is that you want. And luckily, the optics industry has kind of maintain a decent price level and affordability compared to other things like the ammunition industry. So it's still a good time to buy those certain items rather than spending your money on really expensive, I don't know, Russian ammo. You could buy optics now instead, where they're still reasonably priced, but that might not last very long according to what the information is that I found, okay? So Timothy Kennedy, who's the VP of Edmund Optics, says that his business relies on semiconductors, okay? It's in all different components of what they do, and it's a huge photonics business that Edmund Optics is, okay? And since April of 2020, they've seen shortages in the sense of semiconductors, okay? And obviously we already knew that, but that causes problems with acquiring LEDs, right? And the transistors and resistors that they need for a lot of different components in order to keep producing what it is that they manufacture. Obviously, LEDs are a pretty critical component when it comes to things like red dot sights, okay? Or even lights. So these are things that we need to think could be probably applied to other parts of the spectrum, not just sights, but probably even flashlights as well. But either way, this is what they're putting out there, okay? And basically, costs are rising and lead times are longer because of the supply chain disruptions. We already knew that when it comes to just about everything on the planet right now, but this is causing the photonics industry to have a harder time acquiring the resources they need just to produce the basic products that they produce. So a lot of what we're buying right now in the sense of optics is stuff that was made a while ago. So it's very possible that this shortage hasn't actually caught up to the supply that's already on the shelf. The problem is going to be restocking, and that's going to be a big issue here. And there's new products coming out and new stuff on its way that we haven't actually even gotten to acquire yet. And I wouldn't be surprised if those products come out in limited runs or in limited quantities to begin with, because of how difficult it is to get all these raw components, okay? So right now you would think that innovation in the sense of non-electro light gathering style optics like what Trijicon has or like what Meprolight has would be something they can move forward with, right? And start innovating more and more optics that don't require batteries and don't require electronic components, and utilize modern technology to improve on things like the ACOG to move us into a different territory when it comes to, optics efficiency. Unfortunately, those exact innovations are suffering from the same shortages that are causing these problems within the electro-optics industry or the photonics industry. So they can't even move forward on innovating products that don't require semiconductors due to the fact that even the raw materials for those products are in such high demand and such low supply. So there's really not a good answer for this whole situation. The real answer is that you have to wait out the situation until the supply comes back. So the semiconductor shortage is a huge problem. And obviously, it goes from all over the place, from military application to automakers to everything. So you can assume that the photonics industry isn't necessarily the highest priority on the list of people to acquire these semiconductors. And the electro-optics industry has exploded over this last year because of all the new firearms owners out there purchasing things like red dot sights and holographic sights to put on their firearms and to utilize for things like self-defense. So this is what's being put out there, and this is all information that's readily available, but you wouldn't hear about it unless you were looking for it. And thank you to Taborosaurus Rex for putting this information out there, because it is something that we have to get ahead of, especially if you're worried about getting something that you feel you need. And right now is a good time to get it, because very soon here it might be harder to acquire. And Taborosaurus Rex, by the way, I'm pretty sure is a North Dakota resident, so thanks for that, neighbor. But what I will say is that the reason we're not hearing about this, and the reason we don't hear about a lot of these things, and this is what you need to understand, and this is something that came up during my search for this information that was just right out there in the open for us to hear, which we already knew. But here's exactly what I want you to listen to, okay? Industry analyst Dan Hutchinson said, okay, publicly traded companies are reluctant to say much about the impacts, fearing market reactions. So what he's saying is that companies like Trijicon, Burris, Loophole, EOTech, those companies aren't going to come out and tell you that they're facing a supply shortage. They're not going to come out and tell you that they're having issues getting raw materials, that they're having issues getting the LEDs that they need, that they're having issues getting the electro-optic components they need in order to build more of their products, because it will hurt their company. It will hurt their earnings, it will hurt their stocks, and it will also cause panic buying. And what that then does is, yeah, it sells out a lot of their products very quickly, but they cannot recuperate from it fast enough, which then hurts their next quarter's earnings, right? Because suddenly you have one really good quarter, and then you have a hugely disappointing quarter right after because you no longer have anything to sell. So these companies aren't going to come out and tell you that they're out of product, or that they have a limited supply, or that they're very close to the edge of not having what they need. They're going to just keep doing business as usual and hope for the best, and you will see certain products not being available, or requiring notification, or requiring a back order, or whatever it might be because of these reasons, but they're not going to tell you it's because they literally don't have the LEDs in order to make that new red dot sight. So I wanted to bring this to your attention, because if you're like me, you probably have like an EOTech in your cart, or you probably have like a Trijicon chilling somewhere on a website that you bookmarked, okay? Or something along those lines. You're probably thinking about buying it, but it's kind of pricey, and maybe you have to move some inventory around to afford it, or maybe you haven't justified the purchase yet, or maybe you're just not sure if it's something you want to spend the money on. Well, if you're also like me, you're probably going to buy that item now, because it's going to get more expensive, harder to get, or if you're looking for specialty products, things that have a certain application, might be really hard to find very soon here, because there's only so many of those items. And that's what I'm going to do, is probably buy one of these optics that I've been looking at for a minute, so that I can go ahead and have it rather than not be able to get it when the time would have come otherwise. And that's up to you to make that decision. But what I will say, this is something that you need to keep in mind as well, okay? Anything with electronic components should be your first priority. So scopes like this one are illuminated. An illuminated scope is going to have more of these problems than something that's not illuminated. So make sure you also prioritize what it is you're purchasing now based on some of these scarcities that could show up here very soon. And so if you're gonna look at two different rifle scopes and one of them has illumination and the other one doesn't, the one that has the LED in it might be the problem here very soon compared to the other one that does not. Those are considerations you have to keep in mind as well, okay? So, I wanted to bring this to your attention because I appreciate when other people bring these things to our attention, like Tiborosaurus Rex did. And then when I started looking into it, I found that there's gonna be more problems related to optics in general, not just scopes, and that's something else I felt you all needed to know about. And are you surprised with the way things are going right now that this is an issue? Of course not. So do what you can, and if you can't afford it, don't do it. But what I will say is that anytime you buy a high-end optic, okay, and if you buy something from a high-end manufacturer who has a reliable track record and has quality products that people rely on and can count on and have good things to say about, there's almost never an issue recuperating that investment if you ever need to. And reselling an optic is extremely easy to do, and it's also very rarely gonna hit you very hard negatively. You don't lose a lot of appreciation on optics unless you beat the crap out of them. And if you do, then good for you, because that's probably what we should all be doing. But at the end of the day, if you keep an optic in decent condition and it still works, you can recuperate a lot of that investment if you ever need to down the road. So I wouldn't be too hesitant about it because the money, at least a good portion of it, will still be there as well. Just something I wanted to put out there to give you an idea about. And if you have any questions at all or any thoughts about different optics, feel free to always contact me at magicprepper.com. You can hit the contact form there and actually, send me a message directly. And I'll do what I can to get back to you and try to give you some opinions or advice or whatever it might be. Or I'll point you in the right direction where you can get better opinions or advice than what I even have to offer. I just wanted to mention this, keep you guys informed the best way I can, and don't be afraid to go out there and get an optic, because who knows when that semiconductor shortage will finally catch up. And that's what we're seeing this year. That's what we're seeing right now, is everything finally catching up to us from what happened last year. It's not about what we couldn't get last year. It's about what still hasn't run out yet and is about to. So without anything else to say about the incoming optics shortage and what you need to know about it, that's gonna be it for Magic Prep.